9:37 in the morning. The courtroom was packed. 214 people, reporters from every major newspaper in New York, FBI agents, federal prosecutors, defense attorneys, Harlem residents who'd lined up since 5 a.m. to get seats, everyone waiting for the trial that would finally bring down Ellsworth Bumpy Johnson. The prosecution had a star witness, Theodore "Teddy" Fingers Monroe, a numbers runner who'd worked for Bumpy for 12 years, a man who'd collected millions in bets, who'd distributed payouts, who'd witnessed murders, who'd heard conversations, who'd seen everything. Teddy had agreed to testify, had signed a cooperation agreement, had been promised witness protection and immunity. The federal government had built their entire case around his testimony. There was just one problem. Teddy Monroe wasn't there. His seat at the prosecution table was empty. His FBI handlers had lost contact with him 48 hours earlier, September 21st, 7:43 p.m. Teddy had called his handler, said he needed cigarettes, walked out of the safe house in Queens, never came back. The FBI searched for 48 hours, couldn't find him, called every hospital, every morgue, every contact, nothing. Teddy Fingers had vanished, and without his testimony, the federal case against Bumpy Johnson collapsed. The judge dismissed all charges at 9:52 a.m. Bumpy walked out of that courthouse a free man. Again. What happened to Teddy Monroe became one of Harlem's greatest mysteries. Did he run? Did Bumpy find him? Did he have second thoughts? For 60 years nobody knew the truth, until 2018. When a construction crew renovating a building in the South Bronx found something behind a false wall in the basement, something that answered every question about September 21st, 1965. This is the story of the numbers runner who betrayed Bumpy Johnson, the man who thought the FBI could protect him, the man who learned that in Harlem there's no such thing as witness protection, the man who vanished 48 hours before he was supposed to destroy the godfather of Harlem. Let's go back to the beginning, because you can't understand the betrayal without understanding who Teddy Monroe was. You can't comprehend the disappearance without knowing what led to that safe house in Queens. March 14, 1953, Lenox Avenue and 132nd Street, Harlem. Theodore Monroe was 22 years old, born in Harlem, raised in Harlem, never left Harlem except for 2 years in the army during Korea, came back in 1952, needed work, had a wife, had a baby daughter, needed to feed his family. The legitimate jobs available to a black man in 1953 paid $30 a week, barely enough to survive. The numbers game paid $300. That's not a choice. That's survival. Teddy started as a runner, lowest level, walking the streets, taking bets from regular people, dollar bets, $2 bets, writing down numbers, collecting money, bringing it back to the policy bank at the end of the day. Simple work, low risk, decent money. Teddy was good at it, reliable, never skimmed, never missed a day, never caused problems. After 6 months he was collecting $5,000 a day. After a year, $15,000. After 2 years he was promoted to supervisor, running a team of 12 other runners, responsible for an entire territory, 125th to 145th Street, Lenox to 8th Avenue, 20 blocks, hundreds of thousands of dollars a week. By 1955, Teddy Monroe was earning $800 a week. That's $40,000 a year, more than most doctors, more than most lawyers. He bought a brownstone on Strivers Row, bought his wife a car, sent his daughter to private school, wore expensive suits, ate at the best restaurants. This was the American dream, black excellence, success, and all of it came from Bumpy Johnson's organization. Teddy met Bumpy 3 times in those early years. First time in 1954, Bumpy came to inspect the operation, shook every runner's hand, asked about their families, remembered names, made people feel valued. Second time in 1956. Teddy's wife got sick, needed surgery, $10,000. Teddy didn't have it. Bumpy paid, didn't ask for it back. Told Teddy, family takes care of family. Third time in 1958. Teddy's daughter's 8th birthday party. Bumpy showed up with a present, spent an hour with the kids, made balloon animals. Everyone in Harlem talked about it for months. The godfather at a child's birthday party. This wasn't just employment. This was family. This was community. This was loyalty built through 12 years of trust, which made what happened in 1964 so devastating, because Teddy Monroe was about to betray all of it. November 3, 1964, FBI Field Office, Lower Manhattan. Teddy Monroe didn't walk into the FBI voluntarily. He was arrested, caught by federal agents in a sting operation. They'd been watching him for 6 months, had recordings of him collecting bets, had photos of him with bags of money, had evidence of interstate gambling operations. That made it federal. That made it 20 years in prison. Special Agent Robert Coleman sat across from Teddy in an interrogation room, laid out the evidence, showed him the photos, played him the recordings, told him he was going to federal prison for 2 decades, would miss his daughter growing up, would lose everything, unless he cooperated. Cooperation meant one thing: testify against Bumpy Johnson, tell everything, numbers, operations, money laundering, murder conspiracy, corruption, all of it. In exchange, complete immunity, witness protection, new identity, $50,000 to start over, or refuse and spend 20 years in Leavenworth. Teddy sat in that interrogation room for 6 hours, didn't call a lawyer, didn't call his wife, didn't call anyone, just sat there thinking about his daughter, about his wife, about 20 years, about missing everything, about having no choice. At hour 6, Teddy Monroe signed the cooperation agreement. What Teddy didn't know was that the evidence against him was weak. The recordings were questionable. The photos were circumstantial. A good lawyer could have beaten the case. But Teddy didn't know that. The FBI made it seem overwhelming, made it seem like cooperation was his only option, made him think he was protecting his family. In reality, he was signing his death warrant. For 9 months, Teddy wore a wire, met with FBI handlers twice a week, turned over records, named names, described operations, built the case brick by brick. The FBI promised him safety, promised him protection, promised him a future. Teddy believed them, believed the United States government could protect him from Bumpy Johnson. That was his first mistake. During those 9 months, Teddy continued working, continued collecting, continued operating as if nothing had changed. Every conversation recorded, every meeting documented, every transaction captured. Teddy thought he was being careful, thought he was invisible, thought Bumpy suspected nothing. But Bumpy Johnson didn't survive 40 years in Harlem by being oblivious. Bumpy had informants everywhere, in the FBI, in the police department, in the courts, in the federal prosecutor's office. By March 1965, Bumpy knew everything, knew about the wire, knew about the cooperation agreement, knew about the upcoming indictment, knew that Teddy Monroe was building a federal case. And Bumpy did something unexpected. Nothing. Bumpy didn't confront Teddy, didn't warn him, didn't threaten him, didn't touch him. Just let him keep collecting, keep recording, keep building the case. Bumpy's lawyers told him the recordings wouldn't be admissible. Too many legal problems, too many chain of custody issues. Bumpy wasn't worried about the evidence, he was worried about the testimony. Because testimony is powerful. A man sitting on a witness stand telling stories can destroy empires. Bumpy understood that. So he let Teddy build the case, let the FBI think they were winning, and waited. July 15, 1965, Federal Grand Jury, Manhattan. The grand jury indicted Bumpy Johnson on 14 counts: racketeering, interstate gambling, money laundering, conspiracy to commit murder, witness tampering, obstruction of justice, tax evasion. The indictment was 93 pages, named 47 co-conspirators, described operations spanning 30 years. It was the most comprehensive federal case against organized crime in Harlem history. The indictment was built entirely on Theodore Monroe's testimony. He'd testified for 7 hours in front of the grand jury, named names, described crimes, provided details only an insider would know. The prosecutors called it ironclad, said conviction was guaranteed, said Bumpy Johnson would die in federal prison. Trial was set for September 23rd, 10 weeks away. The prosecution needed those 10 weeks to prepare, to build their case presentation, to prepare exhibits, to coordinate witnesses. They also needed those 10 weeks to keep Teddy Monroe alive and willing to testify. The FBI moved Teddy to a safe house in Queens, small apartment in a quiet neighborhood, 2 agents assigned to him 24/7, rotating shifts, armed guards, secure phone line, no visitors, no contact with family except supervised calls, complete isolation for 10 weeks. The FBI told Teddy it was temporary, told him after the trial he'd get witness protection, new name, new city, new life, $50,000 freedom. Teddy agreed, moved into the safe house on July 20th, said goodbye to his wife and daughter, told them he'd see them in a few months, told them everything would be fine, told them to trust him. His daughter Jennifer was 15 years old. That was the last time she ever saw her father. For 9 weeks Teddy lived in that safe house, watched television, read books, met with prosecutors, rehearsed testimony, reviewed evidence, waited, every day the same. Wake up, breakfast with agents, review documents, lunch, more preparation, dinner, television, sleep, repeat. 9 weeks of monotony, 9 weeks of isolation, 9 weeks of slowly losing his mind. The FBI agents rotated every 12 hours. Day shift, night shift, 4 agents total. They got to know Teddy, played cards with him, talked about sports, brought him pizza, made jokes, tried to keep him comfortable, keep him calm, keep him willing to testify. They thought they were doing a good job, thought Teddy was stable, thought everything was under control. They were wrong. September 19th, 1965, 4 days before trial, Teddy started acting different, quieter, more withdrawn, staring out windows, not sleeping, barely eating. The agents noticed, asked if he was okay. Teddy said he was fine, just nervous about testifying. The agents understood, told him it was normal, told him he'd be protected in court, told him everything would be fine. Teddy nodded, didn't say much else. What the agents didn't know was that Teddy had received a message, not a phone call, not a letter, something else, something that made him understand his situation completely, made him realize the FBI couldn't protect him, made him understand what was waiting after the trial. September 20th, 3 days before trial, evening. Teddy was watching television. Agent Morris and Agent Sullivan on duty. 7 p.m., doorbell rang, package delivery. Agent Sullivan checked through the peephole, saw a FedEx driver, package addressed to the safe house. Normal procedure was to refuse deliveries, but this was addressed to Federal Witness Protection Program, official looking. Sullivan signed for it, brought it inside. The package was a manila envelope, no return address, postmarked from Harlem. Sullivan opened it carefully. Inside was a newspaper. The Amsterdam News, Harlem's black newspaper, September 18th edition, current, 2 days old. Nothing unusual about the paper itself, just a newspaper. Sullivan flipped through, found a page that had been marked. Folded corner, page 7, local news section. A small article circled in red pen. The article was about a car accident, single vehicle, hit a tree, driver killed instantly. Name Marcus Webb, age 42, former FBI agent, retired in 1964. The article said brake failure, said investigation was ongoing, said funeral would be private. Sullivan looked at the article, didn't understand the significance, showed it to Teddy. Asked if he knew Marcus Webb. Teddy's face went white, started shaking, couldn't speak, just stared at the article. Sullivan asked again. Teddy said he didn't know him, but Sullivan could see Teddy was lying, could see terror in his eyes. Something about that article had broken him. What Sullivan didn't know was that Marcus Webb was Teddy's uncle, his mother's brother, the man who'd helped raise him, the man who'd been at his wedding, the man who'd held his daughter when she was born. Marcus Webb had worked for the FBI for 20 years, had retired to Harlem, was living quietly in a brownstone on 145th Street, and 3 days before Teddy was supposed to testify, Marcus Webb died in a convenient car accident. The message was clear. The FBI can't protect everyone. Your family isn't safe. Witness protection won't save them. This is what happens when you betray Harlem. This is what happens when you betray Bumpy Johnson. We can reach anyone, anywhere, anytime. Teddy didn't sleep that night, sat in his room, stared at the ceiling, thought about his wife, his daughter, his mother, his sisters, everyone he loved, everyone the FBI promised to protect, everyone who was now at risk because he'd agreed to testify. By morning, Teddy had made a decision. September 21st, 1965, 2 days before trial. Teddy was quiet all day. Agents thought he was just nervous. Prosecutors came by at noon, went over testimony again, asked if he was ready. Teddy said yes. They believed him, left at 3 p.m., told him they'd see him in court. Thursday morning. Teddy nodded, said he'd be ready. At 7 p.m., day shift ended. Agent Morris and Agent Sullivan left. Night shift arrived. Agent Chen and Agent Rodriguez. They did the security check, made dinner, settled in. By 7:30, everything was normal. Teddy was in his room, television on, door cracked, agents in the living room playing cards. At 7:43 p.m., Teddy came out, told the agents he needed cigarettes. The safe house had a rule. No leaving without both agents. One stays, one goes. But they'd been doing this for 9 weeks. Teddy had never caused problems, never tried to run. The agents trusted him. Rodriguez said he'd take him. Chen stayed behind. They walked to the bodega 3 blocks away, normal route. Rodriguez stayed close, watched everything. Teddy bought cigarettes, Marlboros, 2 packs, paid cash. They walked back, got within 1 block of the safe house. Then Teddy stopped, said he forgot lighter. Rodriguez said he had one. Teddy insisted, said he needed his brand. Started walking back toward the bodega. Rodriguez followed, annoyed but patient. They got halfway back. Then Teddy did something unexpected. Dropped the cigarettes, bent down to pick them up. Rodriguez bent down to help, and from around the corner came a black sedan, 1965 Chrysler. Pulled up beside them. Back door opened. 2 men inside. One grabbed Teddy, pulled him into the car. The other pointed a gun at Rodriguez, told him to stay down, don't move, don't follow, or die. Rodriguez went for his gun. The car was already moving, tires screeching, gone in seconds. Rodriguez called it in immediately. 7:48 p.m. Witness kidnapped. Black Chrysler. 2 suspects heading south. Disappeared into traffic. The FBI responded within minutes, called NYPD, put out APBs, checked every bridge and tunnel, stopped cars matching the description, found nothing. The Chrysler vanished, and so did Theodore Teddy Fingers Monroe. For 48 hours the FBI searched, called every contact, checked every safe house, every hotel, every hospital, every morgue, every friend, every relative, nothing. Teddy Monroe had vanished like he'd never existed, and with him went the federal case against Bumpy Johnson. September 23, 1965, trial day. The judge asked where the witness was. Prosecutors couldn't answer, said they'd lost contact, said they were searching. Judge asked when contact was lost. Prosecutors said 48 hours ago. Judge asked if they expected to locate him. Prosecutors couldn't say yes, couldn't say no, just said they were doing everything possible. Bumpy's defense attorney moved for dismissal. No witness means no case. The evidence without testimony wouldn't hold up. Judge agreed. Case dismissed. All charges dropped. Bumpy Johnson walked out of federal court at 9:52 a.m. Free man, again. Reporters asked if he knew what happened to Teddy Monroe. Bumpy said no, said he hoped Teddy was okay, said betrayal was a terrible thing, but he hoped Teddy was safe somewhere. Bumpy's face showed no emotion, no anger, no joy, just calm, like he'd expected this exact outcome. The FBI kept searching, for weeks, then months. Teddy Monroe never surfaced, no body found, no ransom demanded, no witness protection request, no contact with family, nothing. He'd simply vanished. Eventually, the FBI closed the case. Teddy Monroe went into the files as a fugitive, assumed he'd run, assumed he'd chickened out, assumed he was living somewhere under a fake name. They were wrong. May 12, 2018. The Bronx, New York. A construction crew was renovating an old warehouse building in the South Bronx. Building had been abandoned since 1987, condemned, scheduled for demolition. The crew was doing final checks, making sure no homeless people were inside before bringing it down. They found something in the basement, a false wall. Behind it, a small room, 10 feet by 10 feet, concrete floor, brick walls, one door, locked from outside. Inside the room they found a body, or what was left of one. Skeleton, still in clothes, suit and tie, expensive shoes, sitting in a wooden chair, hands positioned as if they'd been tied, rope fragments still visible, skull showed trauma, blunt force, multiple impacts. Left on the concrete floor beside the chair were several items: a wallet, New York driver's license, name Theodore Monroe, expired 1965, $20 bills, 53 years old, perfectly preserved in the sealed room. Also on the floor, a newspaper, the Amsterdam News, September 18, 1965, the edition with the Marcus Webb article, and one more thing, a cassette tape recorder, Sony TC-800 Billions, top of the line in 1965, still had a tape inside. Police recovered everything, sent it to forensics. The findings were conclusive. Theodore Monroe had been dead since approximately September 1965. Cause of death, blunt force trauma to skull. Manner, homicide. Estimated time of death, between September 21st and September 25th, 1965. The cassette tape was degraded, but forensics restored enough to hear voices. The tape contained 2 hours and 14 minutes of conversation between 3 people. One was definitely Theodore Monroe. Voice analysis matched FBI recordings. The other 2 were unidentified, but witnesses who'd known Bumpy Johnson recognized his voice immediately. Bumpy Johnson talking to Teddy Monroe for 2 hours. September 21st, 1965, between 7:48 p.m. and 10 p.m. The missing hours, the tape revealed everything. The kidnapping wasn't random, it was planned. Bumpy had known exactly when Teddy would be walking to the bodega, had known Rodriguez would be alone with him, had known the route, had people watching the safe house for weeks, waiting for the moment. When it came, they took it. Quick, clean, professional. Teddy was brought to this warehouse, Bumpy's property, owned through shell companies, empty, isolated, perfect location. Bumpy was waiting. sitting in that basement room, alone, just him and Teddy. The tape recorded their entire conversation, what Bumpy said, how Teddy responded, the psychological dismantling that happened over 2 hours before the final blow. The tape is now FBI evidence, but portions have been released through FOIA requests. The conversation is devastating, not because of violence, but because of how methodically Bumpy destroyed Teddy's justifications, how he explained betrayal, how he made Teddy understand exactly what he'd done and exactly why it mattered. For 2 hours, Bumpy talked, and when those 2 hours were over, Teddy Monroe understood that he'd destroyed himself. This is what Bumpy said. This is the conversation that ended Teddy Monroe's life. Transcript excerpt, September 21st, 1965, approximately 8 p.m. Bumpy, you comfortable, Teddy? Teddy crying, please, Bumpy, please. My family. Bumpy, your family is fine. Nobody's going to hurt your family. That's not how this works. Teddy, Marcus. Bumpy, Marcus Webb died in a car accident. Brake failure, very unfortunate. But accidents happen, Teddy. Cars are dangerous, especially when maintenance is neglected. That's all that was, an accident, a reminder, but not a threat to your wife or your daughter. I'm not that man. Teddy, unintelligible sobbing Bumpy, let's talk about what you did, Teddy, because I need you to understand. This isn't about anger. This isn't about revenge. This is about consequences. This is about what happens when you break trust. You understand? Teddy, I didn't want to. Bumpy, yes, you did. You chose this. When they arrested you, you could have called me, could have said, Bumpy, I got a problem. FBI is trying to flip me. And I would have gotten you the best lawyer in New York, would have beaten that case before it started. The evidence they had on you was nothing, weak recordings, questionable photos. Any decent attorney would have destroyed it. But you didn't call me. You believed them, believed they had you, believed cooperation was your only option. That was your choice, Teddy. Teddy, they said 20 years. Bumpy, they lied. That's what they do. They scare you, make you think you're trapped, make you think betrayal is survival. And you fell for it. Signed that cooperation agreement, wore that wire for 9 months, recorded every conversation, built their case, testified in front of the grand jury. For what? For immunity they promised. For witness protection they said would save you. Did you really think they could protect you from me? Teddy, they promised. Bumpy, they promised lies. Look where you are, Teddy, in my basement 2 days before you're supposed to testify. The FBI can't find you. Won't find you. Because you're in a place they don't know exists. Owned by companies they've never heard of. Guarded by people who don't exist on paper. You're in my world now. The world where promises mean nothing and power is the only truth. Teddy, crying, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't know what else to do. I was scared. I thought I was going to prison. I thought I'd lose everything. Bumpy, so instead you lost your life. Smart trade. Teddy, please, please, Bumpy. I'll do anything. I'll tell them I lied. I'll recant everything. I won't testify. I'll disappear. Whatever you want. Bumpy, what I want is for you to understand what you did. For 12 years I gave you everything. A job, money, respect, protection. I paid for your wife's surgery. I came to your daughter's birthday party. I treated you like family. And you betrayed that. For what? For immunity from a case you could have beaten? For protection from people who can't protect themselves? For a promise from a government that doesn't keep promises? Teddy, I was scared. Bumpy, everyone's scared, Teddy. Fear doesn't excuse betrayal. Fear doesn't justify destroying the people who protected you. You know what you did? You didn't just betray me. You betrayed every person in our organization. Every runner, every collector, every family that depends on us. The grand jury indictment named 47 people. 47 lives you put at risk. 47 families you endangered because you were scared. Teddy, I didn't think. Bumpy, that's the problem. You didn't think. You thought the FBI was more powerful than Harlem. You thought the federal government could protect you better than your community. You thought a cooperation agreement was stronger than loyalty. You were wrong about all of it. Long silence, approximately 30 seconds. Bumpy, you know what's going to happen tomorrow, Teddy? The prosecutors are going to show up to court. They're going to tell the judge they can't find their star witness. The judge is going to dismiss the case. I'm going to walk out of that courthouse a free man. And you're never going to testify. Not because I killed you, but because you killed yourself. The moment you signed that cooperation agreement, you ended your own life. This room is just where the body lands. Teddy, sobbing, my daughter. Bumpy, your daughter is going to grow up thinking her father abandoned her. That's what everyone will believe. That Teddy Monroe got scared and ran, became a fugitive, chickened out at the last minute. That's your legacy, Teddy, not betrayal, cowardice. Your daughter will spend her whole life wondering why her father left her, and she'll never know the truth, because the truth dies in this room with you. Teddy, please don't. Bumpy, I gave you 12 good years, Teddy. 12 years of respect, of success, of family. You had everything a man could want, and you threw it away because you trusted the wrong people. You trusted the government instead of trusting the community that raised you. You trusted a cooperation agreement instead of trusting the bonds we built over 12 years. That was your choice. This is the consequence. Tape continues for another hour and 47 minutes. Content remains sealed. The tape ends abruptly. The next sounds are not suitable for release. Theodore Monroe died in that basement room, September 21st, 1965, between 9:45 and 10 p.m. His body was sealed in that room, door bricked over, building abandoned, left for 53 years, until construction workers found him in 2018. The FBI investigation into Theodore Monroe's murder remains open, but no charges have ever been filed. Bumpy Johnson died in 1968, 3 years after Teddy vanished. Heart attack at Wells Restaurant. The men who kidnapped Teddy are unknown. The warehouse ownership trail leads nowhere. The case is unsolvable, which is exactly how Bumpy designed it. Jennifer Monroe was 15 when her father disappeared. She's 68 now, living in Atlanta. She gave one interview after the body was identified, said she'd spent 53 years wondering why her father abandoned her, wondering what she'd done wrong, wondering if he'd ever loved her. The truth, she said, was worse than not knowing, because now she understood. Her father hadn't abandoned her. He'd been taken, killed, sealed in a basement for 53 years, and she'd spent her entire adult life blaming him for leaving when he'd never left at all. The story of Theodore Monroe became a lesson in Harlem, not about violence, about trust, about loyalty, about the consequences of betrayal. For 60 years, people thought Teddy had run, had chickened out, had become a fugitive. The truth was darker. He'd trusted the wrong people, believed the wrong promises, made the wrong choice, and paid with his life. Numbers runners in Harlem still tell the story. When young kids start collecting, when they think about skimming, when they get approached by police, when they're offered deals, the old-timers tell them about Teddy Fingers, about the man who betrayed Bumpy Johnson, about the man who vanished 48 hours before trial, about the body sealed in a basement for 53 years, and they end the story the same way every time. The FBI can't protect you. The federal government can't save you. Cooperation agreements mean nothing, because power doesn't come from badges or courtrooms. Power comes from community, from loyalty, from trust built over years. And when you break that trust, there's no witness protection program that can hide you. There's no safe house that can keep you safe. There's only consequence. And consequence doesn't forget, doesn't forgive, doesn't expire after 53 years. Theodore Monroe betrayed Bumpy Johnson to the FBI, wore a wire for 9 months, testified to a grand jury, built a federal case, and 48 hours before trial, he vanished. For 53 years everyone thought he ran. The truth is, he never made it out of Harlem, never made it past that September night, never made it anywhere except a basement room sealed behind a false wall, waiting for someone to find him, waiting to finally tell his daughter the truth, that he didn't abandon her, that he loved her, that he just made one terrible choice, and that choice cost him everything. This is Harlem, this is Bumpy Johnson, this is the untold legend.